I'd like to call to order the November meeting of the Knox County Board of Zoning Appeals. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll.
Curtis Brown.
Present.
Jonathan Repass.
Present.
James Lloyd.
Present.
Doug Lloyd. Ashley Williams. Cecil Anderson.
Present.
John Elliott.
Present.
Sherry Garrett.
Present.
Rebecca Longmire.
Present.
Paul Huff.
Present.
All members are present.
At this point in time, because we have two members who have not been sworn in, we have 7 voting members and 2 non-voting members, but we do have a quorum. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members or volunteers from each commission district who do not receive compensation for their work on the board or training they attend. As a quasi-judicial body, we avoid ex parte communication and conduct our business in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. My name's Paul Huff. I'm the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals. To my right is Mr. Curtis Brown, the vice chairman. To his right is Mike Moyers, our law director representative. There are additional folks here from codes, I think. Steve, if you would.
Yes, you have myself, Steve Elliott, Miranda Ward, and I don't know if anyone from planning is going to attend today.
Okay.
I'll try my best to answer for them.
Our voting procedure requires a simple majority of the board members present. Today, there are 7 voting members present. As soon as we have the other 2 sworn in, there'll be 9. The Knox County Board of Zoning Appeals is authorized to grant variances and hear other matters by the Tennessee Code and the Knox County Zoning Ordinance, specifically 6.60 Board of Zoning Appeals. These laws prescribe strict parameters, the meeting of which is required to grant a variance. The burden of proof that an application meets these parameters rests on the applicant. I'm going to pause the meeting at this point to swear in the 2 members. Oh, he's not quite here. Okay. Quoting from the Knox County Code of Ordinances 6.60.04 variances, quote, "The purpose of the variance is to modify the strict application of the specific requirements of this ordinance in the case of exceptionally irregular, narrow, shallow, or steep lots or other exceptional physical conditions whereby such strict application would result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship which would deprive an owner of the reasonable use of their land. The variance shall be used only where necessary to overcome some obstacle which is preventing an owner from using their property as the zoning ordinance intended. For each matter, the clerk will read the request into the record. The chair will then ask the applicant if the applicant is present. The chair will then ask if there is opposition or other speakers who wish to present. You do not have to come forward at this time. Once we determine the speakers for the item, we will call on government agencies such as Knox County Codes, Planning, or Engineering to make statements regarding the facts pertinent to the property and background of the request. The board members may ask questions of the government agencies once they have made their statements. The chair will then call on the applicant to come forward, state their name and address for the record, and present their evidence and reasoning supporting the granting of the variance. If there is no opposition, the applicant has 10 minutes to present their case. If there is opposition, the applicant and opposition have up to 15 minutes. After the applicant's presentation, the board members may ask questions of the applicant. The chair will then call for opposition or other parties who have up to 15 minutes to speak. This 15 minutes applies to all parties, so if there are multiple parties that wish to speak, please determine how you're going to divide your time beforehand. After the opponents present their opposition, the board members may ask questions of the opponents. Finally, if there will be discussion of the case by the board, during which time the board members may ask further questions of the parties that have already testified. The board will then make any determinations it deems necessary. Our bylaws allow an applicant at the initial hearing of the matter to request a deferral of 30 or 60 days without prejudice. In the event of a deferral of an application, a failure to appear, any opponents may be heard on the record at a meeting where the application they oppose appears on the agenda. We're ready to swear in the two board members.
First one I've ever had, I got them today, so just, you have to know this.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good to see you too.
Now, Mr. Moyers, would you please swear in anybody giving testimony today?
All right, if you're here to speak to this board on any matter involving, that's on the agenda, either for or against, please stand and raise your right hand. If you intend to speak to this body, please stand and raise your right hand. All right, do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Be seated, please.
Are there any agenda changes?
No.
Okay, we'll start with item 4A. I'm sorry, minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from last month?
So moved.
Go ahead.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Now we'll start with 4A.
Item 4A is a request of Colleen Walker for waiver of front yard setback from 50 feet to 20 feet for garage located at 8508 Old Jacksboro Road, CLT map 027, parcel 18903, zone AG in the 8th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? If you would come forward and state your name, or just come forward. Is there any opposition?
No.
Anything from codes?
Yeah, she's requesting a reduction down to 20 feet, but I was talking to her here before the meeting, and it looks like she doesn't need that big of a reduction on her site plan. So I think we need to get some clarification there, and maybe we don't need quite down to the 20 feet.
Okay. Any questions of the codes for that? If you could state your name and address, please, for the record.
Colleen Walker, 8508 Old Jacksboro Road, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37938.
Can you step closer to the microphone?
Yeah, I couldn't
Sorry.
get the podium to lower. I don't know what's going on with it today.
Short people problems.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, pursuant to Knox County Code 6.60.04 variances, what evidence do you have to support your request?
There is I'll call it a dip. Greg Moyers from Knox County Health Department called it a depression. And there is, our KUB lines go underground there as well.
Steve, I think we discussed this depression in the agenda meeting. Does this meet the definition of a sinkhole?
Yes, it does. By ordinance, it is a sinkhole. So
Mr. Chair.
there would be a 50-foot buffer around it. So she would either need to get a foundation design done by geotech to build in that 50-foot or build out of it. So maybe she does need the 20 feet now that I say that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Ma'am, you live at the end of a joint permanent easement, a long driveway?
Yes, it's family property.
Okay. And you have a septic line in there also?
Correct.
Okay. If you get the waiver back to 20 feet, you said you might not need that much?
Yeah. It's a guesstimate. I don't really know. Yeah.
Ms. Longmire, I was going off of her site plan, and her site plan shows the structure being built kind of at the little stub out of the driveway.
Yeah.
The house is approximately, what do we say? The house, the edge of that driveway, the existing driveway is about 32 feet. And the house meets setbacks really close, so. If that existing driveway is going to stay, she would only need a reduction down to the backside of that driveway.
Well, in view of the various reasoning, the underground power lines, the depression, the sinkhole, the septic, I'd like to make a motion to approve the waiver due to these various reasons. And the waiver would be to the 20 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
In case you don't need it.
Okay.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
4B is a request of Kenneth M. Cash. It's for waiver of minimum floor elevation from 1 foot above 500-year elevation, 851.3, to 2 feet above 100-year elevation, 844.5. 2 feet above the 100-year is the state of Tennessee minimum. Property is located at 3559 Johnson Frazier Cemetery Road, CLT map 112, parcel 08206, property zone agricultural and F floodway in the 9th Commission District.
Is the applicant here? Is there any opposition? Anything from codes on this?
Not at this time. I'm sure you're going to have questions, but we'll let him present first, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions by the board for codes? If you could, state your name and address, please, for the record.
My name is Kenneth M. Cash. Live at 3559 Johnson Frazier Cemetery Road, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37914.
And pursuant to code 6.60.04, what evidence do you have to present to support your request?
Where we live in the, right down on the French Broad River, which is 22 miles below Douglas Dam. And on September the 28th. Of course, we had the flood, and the water stayed in our house, 7 foot in our house for 4 days. And then it eventually went down. Was thankful that we did have insurance, but I was wanting to go back up to an elevation on top of, I have 6 acres down there, and the elevation that I wanted to build at, which I had Eddie Garrett to come down to my house, he's a surveying company, and the elevation is 840.45, which the 844, I think was yours, 844 and a half,
Yes.
would give me a 4-foot crawl space. And the reason I didn't want the 4-foot crawl space is because I have 2 artificial shoulders and 2 artificial hips, okay? And if I could get this variance to the elevation to where Mr. Garrett surveyed this at, then that would put me on a level thing, and that way I could go ahead and build our house on a slab and not even have a crawl space. And when the dam, when the water got the highest, like I said, it was 6 to 7 feet inside our living room, and it was 2 to 3 feet above coming across Douglas Dam at that time. And at the highest level that the water was at that time, it was a good 35 to 40 yards from where I have selected this building site.
Your application says, I think what it says is that the 100-year flood elevation at this location is 844.5, is that correct?
No,
That would be, the 844.5 would be 2 foot above the 100, and that would be the finished floor elevation. I don't think Mr. Cash is agreeing with that now. I think since he's had it surveyed, he's now requesting 840.5, which would be, that would actually be 2 foot below the 100-year.
So your application is, you want to build below the 100-year flood elevation?
if that is the 840.45, yes, sir. So we have, it's on our own property. And like I say, there's where I was living, the elevation where our house was, I think was 828, and that's when it flooded. And at the highest level, like I say, it wasn't even close to where our building site is now.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
if you move it up to the 844.5, can you not build it on the slab there?
You would have to have a 4-foot slab. Yeah, 4-foot crawl space. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I understand why you want to avoid the crawl space.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your current house, the one that was damaged, what are your plans for it?
Well, it kind of depends on what we decide to do. If we can get a site, what we're going to do, it was a brick home, okay? And we've done gutted it and got it cleaned up, and we're going to use it for just storage.
Okay. So you understand that if you do get the waiver to the 840.5, that house cannot be used as a dwelling for any reason?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
I do.
Does codes have a problem with the 840.5 being 2 feet below the 100-year?
I think I'll remain silent on that.
Okay. That's a good answer. Does it meet the state or anything?
It does not. The state minimum would be 2 foot above the 100-year. So the state minimum would be 842.
Okay. And Mr. Cash, would you be able to get flood insurance on this one, do you think?
Oh, yes, you can get flood insurance. Uh-huh.
Well, I know it'll be expensive, but it will be expensive, I'm sure. Flood insurance is expensive.
$3,300 a year.
Worth it if you get flooded, right?
Well, yes, it is. It's worth it. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
A lot of people wish they had it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you made it through the flood safely.
Thank you.
Codes would add anything that we build above where he's at now makes the situation better. I will say that.
Did we decide where that 844 was going to be as far as this diagram from the house? Was it back in this area,
It's where right at the curve of the driveway.
right in here?
So he's just doing it a little bit below the curve of the driveway.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Any
Mr.
other
Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the elevation of 844.5,
No, 840.5.
844.5,
Well, no, this was a change to that.
840.5, okay. Do the elevations and from the distance from the original home.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I will state my opposition to this. It does not meet the state minimum flood elevation. You've been flooded once. I'm not sure why you would want to build below the 100-year flood elevation again, but that's up to you. But I oppose this. Any other discussion? Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No? 2, 3. Motion carries.
840.5.
840.5?
840.5.
Okay,
That's, you got it.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Next item is 4C, request of Greg Smith for waiver of side yard setback from 8 feet to 5 feet for detached garage located at 12728 Water Grove Drive, CLT map 162, Group OC, parcel 029, zone PR in the 5th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition to this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any statement from codes?
None at this time.
Any questions for codes? If you would, please state your name and address, please.
My name is Daryl Riegel. I am the homeowner, DARRYLRIEGEL, 12728 Water Grove Drive, Knoxville, 37922.
This is not the same name as some.
Greg Smith is the builder.
Okay. I assume you have some approval from Greg to speak on his behalf?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, he was very glad I was going to be here today.
Okay. Pursuant to Knox County Code 6.60.04, what evidence do you have to present that supports your application for the variance?
The variance regards the width of the building. The building has been submitted through Homeowners Association architectural review and approved. They, however, required the building to be moved forward so that the overhang can be connected from the existing porch to the new building. As a result, it had to come forward about 6 feet on the design, which places it roughly 84 feet now, I believe. You may be able to measure that more accurately. 84 feet from the road rather than 90 feet. The question now is that the setback from the property line on the west side now per design is at 5 feet. The code specifies that to be 8 feet, and I'm asking for a variance on that code so that it can still be 5 feet from that property line.
Doug, is this your, or Cecil? Cecil,
It's
sorry,
mine.
Cecil.
What was his name?
His name is Gerald Regal.
Regal?
Would you spell your name? Would you spell your last name again, please?
R, I, E as an elephant, G as in girl, E as an elephant, L. My high school counselor couldn't get it right.
Mr. Regal, question I have. Your sidewalk that is between the house and your intended garage is showing here 4 feet. Is that correct? Between the house and the garage, the new garage?
Oh, yes, sir. There's a walkway right there, and that's probably going to be pavers. I didn't know he submitted that there.
Well, the reason why I'm asking, as far as the variance that you're requesting, have you considered maybe putting that sidewalk on the other side so that you can and push your garage closer to your home? That way you would not have to have a variance?
There are windows on that side of the house. That's the living room area. We didn't want to move the garage too close to be able to basically make that a cave on the inside with no outside light.
So you're saying that 4 feet is going to make a difference between that?
That's actually a planter bed right there as well. So the building will end up being about 8 to 9 feet from the windows on the inside of the house.
Have you discussed this with your neighbor?
Yes. And the neighbor on that side of the property is Corey Mike. So that would be that house you had your pointer on. That's mine. And Corey and Terry are the one to the left on the picture. He is aware of the design. He's aware. He actually was unaware that 8 feet versus 5 feet was going to be an issue. What he knows is that it has been approved for 5 feet from the fence. The fence is on the property line. And the markings have been laid out through the surveyor, and he is aware of that being approved by the homeowners association already.
You're also saying that by putting the garage further back, that it would be kind of an unsightly addition in the location.
I'd like the garage to actually still connect. The end of the driveway to the swimming pool area in the backyard is about a 4.5 foot elevation drop. And I'm trying not to have to deal with a downsloping driveway into this new build.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have some comments. What I'm hearing is that you don't want to put the walkway on the other side of your building because of aesthetic reasons?
Yes. We're going to have an overhang there that's going to be connecting the main house to the new build on the garage. It's going to have a gate associated with it. That's going to be the entry point from the main driveway to the laundry room area and also a side door into the new garage build. And then that'll be the continuing walkway down to the backyard.
But there's nothing physically stopping you from moving it closer, 4 feet closer to the house and putting
There's
the
nothing
sidewalk.
physically there other than my spouse. The space there is to maintain aesthetics and light into the main part of the house.
You do realize that variances are basically the option of last resort, right?
Was not aware we needed a variance. We had gotten to the point where we were getting ready to do the build when we discovered that there was a difference then between the 5 foot and the 8 foot, simply because it was moved 6 feet closer to the street.
I'm not at all sure I see where it's moving it 6 feet closer,
Well-
because it's parallel to the
Well,
the property line.
Well, the previous design submitted to homeowners association actually had the garage build at about 90 feet. It was further back. The homeowners association committee said, nope, we won't approve it. It has to be attached. And in order for the build to be attached, it needed to be moved up even with the existing awning off of that side door.
But that doesn't move it closer to the side yard property line.
But the difference between being 90 feet back, the variance on the, or the standard for the property line at the fence is 5 foot. By coming closer than 90 feet, it's now an 8-foot requirement.
Yeah.
And that's the exception I'm asking for. And that's what the architectural committee agreed to and what my next door neighbor is aware of.
With all due respect, the homeowners association means nothing to us.
Yes, understood.
I guess my point was, there's nothing stopping you from putting the sidewalk on the other side of the building, which could be in the setback. It's not regulated by the setback. Moving your building closer to the house. That can be done. You don't want to do it for various reasons, but it can be done. So a variance is not your only option.
Understood.
May I ask a question?
Okay.
To get something clear. If you moved it closer to the house, you would be blocking the windows?
We would then be creating the garage more of a visual block and light access into the windows on that side of the living room.
How far actually from the wall of the garage to the windows would there be?
The
you moved
existing design is about 10 feet.
And if we moved it over, what, 4 feet?
It would be 4 feet.
Okay, thank you.
May I interject here? I think what he's talking about on the 90 feet, as we put it up on the screen, is for accessory buildings in this zone, if they are more than 90 feet off of the street, they can be 5 feet from the property line. So the front of the building is 86 feet. If it's scooted back 4 feet, it could be 5 feet off the side property line. It would be a conforming structure then. But since it's only 86 feet, it has to be 8 feet off the property line. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's another option. You have two options. You can move it back away from the street, 4 feet
Yes.
to 90 feet, and you don't need a variance, or you can move it closer to the house and you don't need a variance.
I have a question.
And your issue with the homeowners association is not our problem.
I have a question.
Yes.
I noticed in your reasoning, you also mentioned that moving the garage close into conflict with the resident's side entrance. Is that moving it closer to the house? Are you saying it would interfere with the
There's a
entrance?
side entrance adjacent to the, you can't really see, but there's a side entrance right there where the mouse is. That is the door into the laundry room area, into the kitchen. Because we have to connect, there's an awning over that, because we're required to connect them with a design, that has to somehow mesh with the new build. If I move the building back, then I won't be able to make that connection because that existing overhang is going to be in front of the build, so I can't connect them together. And that's not a county requirement, that's a homeowners association requirement.
And can I clarify the red square, your red rectangular, is that where the garage would be if it were 90 feet back? Just below the green line?
That seems quite a bit further back,
Yeah.
disproportionately.
Yeah. I mean, that seems more than 4 feet.
It seems a lot more than 4 feet. And just looking where that is based on the rest of the house, from the edge of the existing driveway to the back edge of the house is 28 feet and a little change. That now extends back to the swimming pool deck, which is probably another 20 feet.
Mr. Chairman, could I get some clarification here?
Certainly.
Are you attaching this to the house, or is there a breezeway?
It'll be a breezeway. Essentially, it's a covered roof attachment.
If you enclose that, it becomes part of the house and it only have to meet a 5-foot setback. Because it would be, then it'd be part of this.
Only needs to be closed just for that section. If it's not completely open, then.
If it's enclosed and attached to the house only has to meet 5 feet. The accessory structure is the one that has to meet 8 feet. So if you enclose that breezeway and build, that structure is going to be built to code anyways, so.
It essentially, because it needs to be connected, the whole thing needs to be kind of, not necessarily the framing, but the roof needs to be redone anyway.
Yeah, so if you connect, you only have to meet 5 feet. You don't need a variance.
Option 3.
Option 3. Any other discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Yes. I move to deny the waiver for the variance because there are other options available without a variance.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries.
And, sir, please talk to codes about the opportunity to do the connection,
Very
which
well.
would make it
Thank you
easier.
much.
Okay, moving on.
Item 4D. 4D is a request of James Gantner, Janney, for waiver of front yard setback from 40 feet to 39 feet at 10700 Fox Park Lane, CLT map 089, parcel 00801, property zone ag in the 6th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition to this? Not that I'm aware of. I hope not. Any statement from codes?
None at this time.
Any questions of codes or any other government agents? If you could, please state your name and address for the record, please.
James Gantner Janney, 10700 Fox Park Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37931.
And pursuant to code 6.60.04, what evidence do you have to present that supports your application?
So the irregular shape of the lot, and specifically the chords of the property boundary along the arc of the standard road width, result in portions of the property boundary being further from the road center line than is standard for a road of this size at the locations in the middle of the chord. We request 1 foot of setback variance to allow for a corner of our planned addition to project across the standard 40-foot setback line.
Whose district is this in? 6. Mr. Elliott.
I have no questions for the applicant, and I'd like to make a motion to approve the setback variance from 40 feet to 39 feet due to the irregular shape of the lot. And you also made a good point in our earlier meeting. If it was taken from the road, it would probably be fine the way it is. So,
Second.
thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded. I do have a comment. This issue comes about because your property line along the edge of the road was defined by chords instead of a simple curve. If it had been defined as a simple curve, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So I fully concur with Mr. Elliott. All those motion's been made and seconded. Any other conversation? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? You're approved.
Thank you.
Four E is a request of Brian Ingerson, It's for waiver of periphery boundary from 35 feet to 5 feet at 1935 Poplar Hill Road, CLT map 154, Route BC, parcel 032, property zone PR in the 4th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition? Anything from codes?
Nothing at this time.
Any questions for codes? If you could, please state your name and address for the record.
It's Brian Ingerson, 1935 Poplar Hill Road, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37922.
Pursuant to Knox County Code 6.60.04, what evidence do you have to present that supports your application for variance?
Okay, so if you can take a look here, main reason I'm asking for the variance is I could build up closer to the garage. However, there are future plans to further develop our house and add another bathroom or expand the bathroom, so it would end up taking that space. I also could move it closer to the driveway there, but as you can see, the neighbor has somewhat done that, and it's become a very eyesore. And so I was trying not to do that for any other future neighbors, because that shed will end up leaving when those renters leave at that time. So from the back of the property, if you go to the one where it shows the 35-foot mark is at the front of the gray square there. And so I'm requesting the 5 foot to be able to add that exterior building there, or forget what you call them, but it's going to end up being a workshop area where my wife and I can do pottery, and I can also work on my technology because currently it is in my bedroom and the wife is requesting that it be removed. So I need a place to be able to work on computers and work on network stuff that I'm working on my degree to get as well.
You mentioned something about renters. Who's renting property?
The property to the right
Oh,
is currently renters.
okay,
And when-
so you're not renting any property?
I'm not, I'm the
Okay.
owner.
All right.
I'm just trying to do my due diligence for any future once they leave, so that it's not an eyesore. It also helps me continually access my backyard, because if I built up closer, it would kind of block access to that off the driveway.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
At the back of your property, what is at the back of your property?
So I am at the very end of the cul-de-sac of our neighborhood. And so Pellissippi is right behind us. So this building also helps block any sound coming from that as well. I do have a fire pit that's back there, so that's going to also help buffer some of that sound. Recently, some of that green tree vegetation has been trimmed back to help keep trees from falling into the Pellissippi Road. So I've kind of lost some of that buffer there because it's actually more hardwood that's grown up versus the evergreen type trees. So I'm trying to also create some additional buffer. I'll be planting some additional trees behind that building as well. I guess they call it the Class A type shrub, where they're 15 feet tall and about 4 feet wide once they're fully grown. So I'm just trying to make my property a little bit better to use in this process.
And there's no chance of the property behind you ever being built on, is that correct?
Correct. No, it's state-owned, and so they have actually, where you can see that stream or runoff, it drops off probably about 15 feet behind there. So they won't ever be able to develop that because that's the state's runoff as well.
Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Any additional questions? Whose district is this? Whose is this? Oh, our new member, Mr. Williams.
I personally don't have a problem with this. And actually, I would make a motion to move based off the periphery to Pellissippi.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Item 4F is a request of Amanda Ortiz for waiver of lot intensity from 2 dwellings per 2 acres to 2 dwellings per 1.1 acre to build a garage apartment. Property is located at 4900 Murphy Road, CLT map 49, parcel 066, zone ag in the 8th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition to this? Anything from codes?
None at this time.
Any questions for codes? If you could please state your name and address, please, for the record.
Sure. Amanda Ortiz, 1325 Flatwood Road in Sevierville, Tennessee, 37862.
And pursuant to code 6.60.04, what evidence do you have to present that supports your application for the variance?
I am a general contractor, and I'm here. The owner is also here. He has special topography there that there is a sinkhole to the right, already a known sinkhole. Can't do anything with that side of the property. There is a garage that we are rebuilding that was damaged by a tree, and the question here was to put a small apartment above the garage for extended family that have come in out of the country and to be able to stay there. So because it was a 1.81, we had to ask for the variance. It was considered a second dwelling, even though it's an above garage apartment.
Whose district is this?
Question. This property is zoned agricultural. Has there any discussion been made about maybe changing the zoning on it?
No, not at this point.
Codes? Do you have-
I believe we looked earlier, and this property is in the planned growth area, so it could be rezoned to PR, which would allow this use. It would require rezoning, which would require them to go to planning commission. Then they would have to go to county commission, obviously, to take the legislative action for the rezoning, and then they would have to submit a development plan to add the second structure. So it'd be a 3-step process, but yes, they could rezone and get and obtain the same result.
But since the sinkhole depression is on the part of the property that is not being used, there really would not be an advantage, would there? Since they couldn't build on it,
No,
probably.
they couldn't build over there, so it would be, I would say the most they could get here would be 2 dwellings, which is what they're asking for today.
Okay. And there is a certain amount of topography there that's a problem. And the garage is already there.
Yes.
You're remodeling it basically.
Yes,
to
rebuilding
add-
it. A tree fell on it, so it got damaged, so we're rebuilding the garage for them. And the garage is detached. It's the second building you can see over there. Yes.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
And I will say that if you look at the property and its surroundings, it is surrounded by subdivisions that are on much smaller lots than the 1.82.
Okay.
81. And since this is in my district, I would like to approve a waiver of lot intensity from 2 dwellings per 2 acres to 2 dwellings per 1.81 acres to
I'll
build
second.
a garage apartment.
Motion's been made and seconded, and I'll add that request is based on the topography and the proximity to the sinkhole, and that there would be no advantage to having it rezoned. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you.
4G is a request of Timothy Dale Kinkeed for waiver of lot intensity from 2 dwellings per 2 acres to 2 dwellings per 1.82 acres. Property is located at 7604 Seven Islands Road, CLT map 99, parcel 10103, zoned ag in the 9th Commission District.
This is in my district. Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition to this? Any statement from codes?
None at this time.
Any questions for codes? If you could stand, please step forward and state your name and address. Be sure to turn the mic on if it's not already.
My name is Timothy Dale Kincaid, and I live at 7604 Seven Islands Road, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37920.
And pursuant to code 6.60.04, what evidence do you have to present that supports your application for the variance?
Yes, sir. After surveying the adjacent property's topography, I've found this, due to the steep slopes and how the property lays, that the adjacent property would be no use to me. And in addition, the cost of improving any additional land would create a financial burden, factoring in the grade work, clearing of mature trees, and the cost of the land. It would not be feasible on such a small variance.
Sir, you're adding a mobile home, is that what you're asking to do?
Yeah, manufactured house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Will you have to have a separate septic system, or are they going to tie on?
Yes, SSDS, I will.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I see in your drawings, you've got a carport that can be removed, noted on there. What are the other two buildings? Are they storage?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a lawnmower shed, but it's got a little bit of everything in it. The carport, it just houses the chickens.
So I'm a little confused. The whole property is 1.82 acres, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're wanting to put 2 houses on that?
Yes, sir.
Is there one house there already?
Yes, ma'am.
You live in one house?
I do.
So you're just wanting to add a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that for rental purposes or family?
It's to house my son. I'm handicapped and I need him closer to me to take care of me.
Are you subdividing this piece of property?
No, sir.
Did you put the topography back there? Yes, it's easy to see there's a fairly steep slope at the back of the property.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve based on the topographic issues and the fact that the property behind the house would be unusable even if you could purchase it. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Any opposition? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? You're granted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board.
Item 4H is a request of Daniel Sanders for Anthony Reynolds, Enchanted Farms. This is to appeal Knox County administrative decision to apply the building code to the structure on the property. The property is located at 809 East Copeland Drive, CLT map 037, parcel 05304, zoned ag in the 7th Commission District.
Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Is there any opposition to this? Any statements from Knox County Codes?
None at this time. I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I don't have anything to start.
Any questions for codes from the board? If you could state your name and address for the record, that is the applicant, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Daniel Sanders. My address is 920 Volunteer Landing, Knoxville, Tennessee 37915. And it's a couple of preliminary matters. We have provided the board with a couple of handouts. I've also provided those to the clerk. One is an affidavit from Mr. Reynolds, who sets out many of the things that Ms. Hunt is going to say here in a minute. The second handout are a set of photographs, and we'll get into those photographs here in a minute, but the photographs are marked Exhibit B, 1 through 7, I believe. As I said, I'm Daniel Sanders. I represent Enchanted Farms. It's a Christmas tree farm out in North Knox County. I have with me today Ms. Gina Hunt. She is an owner and the manager of the Christmas tree farm, and she has a statement that she'd like to read to the board.
If you could wait just a minute. You've stated that the regulation that you're referring to is 6.60.03 Section A. So is the information you're about to present us in support of that?
Well, our request here today is that the board find that we've provided.
Can you move to the microphone, please?
Our request here today is that the board find that the building code does not, the building code does not apply to the use of the property.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, the section you're quoting deals with what's necessary to grant a variance.
Right.
This is not a variance request. The Board of Zoning Appeals has a variety of powers. Most often what you see is a variance, but this is the appeal of a decision by the building inspector, basically, by the codes enforcement department. So this is more interpretive than a variance. There really aren't any grounds or any specific things you're required to do within the zoning code, unlike what you need to do to find a variance. What you're being asked to do is take the interpretation of the laws that our building codes inspector has made, listen to Mr. Sanders and his client's arguments about why it should be interpreted a different way, and then make your own interpretation of how the laws are to be applied to this property. So the section you're citing really doesn't have any application here.
Just to be clear, I was citing 6.60.03 Section A, where it says the board shall have the power to hear and decide appeals.
Yes.
Where it's alleged there's an error in any order, requirement, decision, or determination by an administrative official.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Right, so
So
in
I
this
just want
case-
to make sure that this is what you're about to present.
Yes. In this case, just briefly, and Mr. Elliott can speak to that, but Mr. Elliott, and I'll speak to this a little bit more in a minute, but Mr. Elliott has made the determination that Enchanted Farms needs a building permit to engage in certain activities on this piece of property.
Okay, proceed
So-
with your testimony. 15 minutes. Go ahead and restart this.
Hello, my name is Gina Hunt. I'm one of the co-owners of Enchanted Farms at 809 East Copeland in Knox County. We are a family-owned Christmas tree farm. We started the farm to provide local-grown Christmas trees to our community and to create a place where families and individuals can come together, enjoy the holiday season, and connect with nature and the farm setting. Enchanted Farms is primarily dedicated to commercial production of Christmas trees. We have several species grown on our property. We follow a rigorous schedule of planting, maintaining, harvesting the trees. This process includes soil preparation, tree shaping, pest control, regular maintenance, and all these activities are essential to ensure that we produce high-quality trees. We have approximately 2,300 Christmas trees. We planted our first trees in 2021. Those trees are due to be harvested this year. After harvesting, we'll be planting a new set of trees that will be coming in April. We intend to continue the Christmas tree production each year for the foreseeable future. We file Schedule F on our federal tax, income tax. To support the farm operations, we constructed and renovated several barns on our property. The barns are primarily for storage equipment, supplies, and needed for the tree farm, such as the tractor, mowers, herbicides, pesticides, fertilization, and maintenance tools and consumables. The other barns are used for tree picking events. One is enclosed and one is open. In addition to helping sustain the farm financially, we intend to rent the barns for private, educational, and recreational and entertainment, like corporations, retreats, community gatherings, weddings. The rentals will be limited to fit naturally into the farm's operation. The rentals will be secondary to the farm operation. They require much less time and effort to maintain the running of the tree farm. Typically, we work 30 or more hours to dedicate to our tree farm, whereas we would only work 5 hours a week at the most, spending on rental tasks. The income from the rental will allow us to reinvest our tree farm, maintain the property, cover operational costs. However, the farm's primary focus and purpose has always been agricultural. Whether a cattle farm or growing and selling Christmas trees, we view the event rental aspect of our farm operation as agritism to supplement our agricultural income. We believe people will want to visit our farm because it is a beautiful place to spend time. We envision Enchanted Farms not only as a working farm, but also a community space that supports agritism to help people connect with agriculture. I hope the board will consider the importance of preserving agricultural, exempting the farm, and supporting the local farmers like ours. We ask that you determine that the building codes does not apply to Enchanted Farms. Thank you.
I have a question for you, ma'am.
Yes.
Do you have any employees that work?
No,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I'd like to ask you a couple questions, too.
Okay.
Ms. Hunt, have you had,
You need to step to the microphone, please, sir. We can't hear you.
Ms. Hunt, have you had individuals, photographers contact you to do photo shoots at the farm because of its farm-like appearance?
Yes,
And it isn't indeed a farm, isn't it?
yes it is, as you can see in the pictures.
Okay, and do you believe that people want to have events in your barns because of its farm setting?
Yes, I do.
That'll be all.
Okay, thank you.
So I had, I provided you all with a handout, but I also provided you with a letter setting out this legal argument with the appeal that we filed. So I hope you guys have reviewed that. But essentially, there's no question that Enchanted Farms is an agricultural use. It's engaged in the commercial production of Christmas trees, which are, you read the definition of agriculture, it's either a farm product or a nursery stock, and they produce those things. And this year they'll be selling their first round of Christmas trees, and by any estimation, 500 Christmas trees. They're going to sell 500 Christmas trees. That is a commercial production. If you read the definition of agriculture, it includes recreational, educational, and entertainment events within the definition of agriculture. And it doesn't just say you can do these if you're engaged in agriculture. It says agriculture includes, and it says entertainment. And so we have a recent case out of Jefferson County where an agricultural farm also had weddings and overnight stays. The Eastern Section Court of Appeals in that case was a Wilmuth case, said that weddings are entertainment events that are within the definition of agriculture. So there's no question here that this these events, the Christmas tree farm is exempt from zoning regulations. And I think Mr. Elliott can speak to that. The question here is, will the building code apply? And in Tennessee, we have either a statewide standard, or in certain localities, you have standardized building codes. The statewide standard, in fact, includes an exemption for non-residential farm buildings. And clearly, these are non-residential buildings. There's nobody going to be living there. So it would be our position that they would be exempt from the statewide standard if those were applicable in Knox County. However, Knox County has adopted its own standardized building code. Now, Knox County has adopted that standardized building code according to the authority set out in Tennessee Code Annotated 51116. And that specifically allows, I've provided you all with a copy of that so we can read together, that specifically allows counties to adopt standardized building codes. But if you will read down a little bit further, Tennessee Code Annotated 51122, and these two statutes are both in the same part of the code. Section 122 says, the powers granted to counties by this part do not include the regulation of buildings used primarily for agricultural purposes. And so here we have a section of state code that allows Knox County to adopt standardized building codes. And not more than 4 or 5 sections down, it says, the authority that's granted to Knox County by this part does not include the regulation of agricultural buildings. And so with that, I would turn to, I would draw your attention to Mr. Reynolds' affidavit, which reiterates many of the same things that Ms. Hunt just explained. I've also provided you with these pictures, and I want to make draw a line. There are 3 pictures that show barns with green accents. Those are the barns before they were renovated. And the next 1, 2, 3, 4 pictures show red barns. Those are the barns as they exist now. And in those pictures, you can see the Christmas tree farm. In the last couple of pictures, you can see the barns up close. And the picture of the barns with the tractors, the barn to the far left of the picture is the machine storage barn. The barn in the middle is the barn where they're going to have indoor tree picking events, and the open barn structure that you see to the right is a building that they intend to use for tree picking events and rentals as weather permits. I know that the county has handed you a document that is titled Codes Corners Wedding Barns. I don't want to go over my argument again, but just to read through that. Number one, I would say whatever this is, I don't think it's authoritative. It doesn't cite any laws, rules, or regulations. If I think that we would draw a line if you don't engage in any kind of agriculture on your property, and you just build a structure where you want to have weddings, correct, then codes would apply. But because these structures are on property that is used for commercial production of farm products and nursery stock, then it brings within that definition the entertainment uses that are carried on in conjunction with that activity and secondary to that activity on the same property. And so that's where we come within the definition of agriculture. And then if you read down in paragraph 2 of this document, what does it say? It says, a building or structure used for a wedding is an assembly occupancy, whether it is a barn or a wedding chapel. And then the next sentence begins, the codes define assembly occupancies as, and then it gives a definition. I would put it to you that the codes that it's talking about there are building codes. Those codes are adopted by Knox County under Tennessee Code Annotated 51116. And under 5 122, it says that whatever code you're adopting, you can't use that code to regulate agricultural buildings. And I would put it to you, it doesn't matter what the code defines as occupancy. If it's an agricultural building, then the code doesn't apply just by virtue of the state law. As I mentioned earlier, this document that the codes is provided to you references the state law requirements. If this were a state law jurisdiction, as I said a minute ago, that state law, the default state standards contain an exemption for non-residential agricultural buildings. So, are we done?
4 minutes.
4 more minutes. So, I believe I've gone through the argument. I would just ask the board that we are asking you to overrule the decision that Codes has made to apply the building code to these barn structures at Enchanted Farms. We clearly have an agricultural production. The events that we want to put on in the barns are going to be secondary to the agricultural production. They're going to be carried on the same property. Ergo, those events are agriculture, and we would submit to you that you can't apply the building code to those agricultural uses or agricultural buildings. So buildings that are used primarily for agricultural purposes, and here we have buildings that are used exclusively for agricultural purposes by any definition. With that, I'll stand for questions and would like to reserve the rest of my time for rebuttal.
Any questions of the applicant?
Yes.
Ms. Garrett?
First, is there a reason why, for example, the barn that's going to be, these events are going to be held? Is there a reason why they don't want to abide by the building codes?
We don't know that they don't comply with the building codes now. It's a question of whether they apply or not. Obviously, we don't want to have any unsafe condition, but it's very expensive to go through a process for an engineer, have the building essentially reverse engineered, set of plans stamped, and then tack on whatever additional requirements might be imposed by local building safety or fire codes. And it's those codes that the county has adopted pursuant to the state law. And the state law also says that those codes don't apply to buildings that are used primarily for agricultural purposes. And so the question is, do the codes apply? Not whether we want to comply with them or not. In fact, you might go out there, and I don't be speculating, but you might go out there and you find that the buildings meet code. We don't have any proof that they don't today.
Okay.
But at the same time, you offer no proof that they do.
Pardon?
You offer no proof that they do meet the codes.
No, our request to the board is that the board find that they need not meet codes according to state law.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
In the barn, now, number one, what's a tree picking?
So Ms. Hunt can speak to that a little bit better, but when right now, as Christmas tree time comes around, they'll cut your tree down and they'll put it in one of these barns. You can come walk by and pick it.
Okay.
And there are other events that'll
We
go on
also
at the same time.
show in there that agriculture, we have set up for our children to see all the agriculture, how we grow our trees, what we grow, and what's coming in in the spring.
Okay. Are there bathrooms in there?
They are.
That's always a good thing when you're having kids come in.
Yes.
Are you offering any other things like pictures with Santa or?
So we will have Santa there, and we show off our Christmas trees. They're decorated inside. We also reached out to Young Williams to have their adopted pets come, and so they will be there on site 2 of the days.
Has the fire marshal done any kind of occupancy study about how many people you can get in there?
No, we've not had nothing like that.
Okay. Is there going to be a place like for toasting marshmallows or?
No, ma'am. There is no kitchen. There will be no cooking on site.
Okay.
So just to clarify, you are holding this facility out to the public for their use, is that correct?
For our only, right now, it's only until we get approved. Otherwise, just for our, cutting our trees down, visiting Santa Claus and that. It is open to that.
But the
Another-
public is accessing this building?
Yes.
Another question. I agree that Christmas trees are an agricultural product. I have no problem with that. When did marriage become an agricultural product?
Oh, I'll let him.
So if you will allow me just a moment. The definition of agriculture in Tennessee is quite broad. And we think that that is on purpose because the Farm Bureau had a lot to do with that, and they wanted to protect farmers, and they wanted to allow farmers to supplement their agricultural income with exactly this type of activity. And so Tennessee Code Annotated 13105 2 says agriculture means the land, buildings, and machinery used in the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock. And it gives definitions for farm products and nursery stock. So we would agree that trees are farm products or nursery stock, and probably both. That's sub 1. Sub 2 says the activity carried on in connection with the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock. Okay? So we have tree picking events. We harvest the trees, we sell those trees, and we allow people to come in. That's clearly agriculture. Sub 3 says recreational and educational activities on land used for the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock. So they set up an educational booth. They talk about their trees. Corporate events can also be considered educational because a corporation would rent your property and they would come in and they would, do some kind of educational event about their business or, team building, that kind of stuff. So that's sub 3. Sub 5 or sub 4 reads agriculture still means entertainment activities conducted in conjunction with, but secondary to, the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock when such activities occur on land use for the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock. Okay, so we work backwards. These barns are clearly on land that's used for the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock. It is secondary to the production of the trees, as Ms. Hunt has testified. They spend far less time on the farm rental than they do the tree production. And it's in conjunction with, and I would refer you to the Wilmuth case in Jefferson County. The court found there that it could be considered in conjunction with because people will come to the farm setting for a wedding or other entertainment event to be in a farm setting, and they would find that attractive because of its surroundings. And so I asked Ms. Hunt earlier if photographers had contacted her because they want to come and take photo shoots there. Well, of course they do because it's beautiful, and if you've been there, as I have, you would agree with me. They believe that people would also like to have weddings at the farm because it's a tree farm, and because the barns are beautiful, and because it's well kept, and because of the setting. So, and I would draw you back to the first thing that we said here. There's no question that this is permitted under the zoning regulations, right? If we wanted to have an outdoor wedding, for instance, the same number of people, the same number of cars, the same type of activity, you could have a band play after the wedding. It's a matter of whether the building code applies to this and whether they can move that entertainment activity inside. And the Wilmuth case specifically found that weddings, rental for weddings and overnight stays and that type of thing is I'm having a brain freeze, entertainment activities within the definition of agriculture.
I can understand that. An outdoor wedding is one thing.
Yep.
But in case of fire, which can happen, there's candles at weddings and things like that, the safety of the people there, there's a difference in being in a building and being out in the open. But my compadre here has a question also.
I guess my question, your point to entertainment being secondary to
Sure.
agriculture activities, I mean, how do you define secondary too? I guess I could see a situation where perhaps you spend 90% of your time on growing the trees, but get 70% of your revenue in the long run over events. I mean, we all know how expensive wedding rentals can be.
So the Wilmuth case also addresses that, and the court took what I would call a sweat equity approach. And the testimony in the Wilmuth case was that the owner of the farm, there was some agriculture activity there. There was some cattle production. There was some hay production. There was a pond with some fish in it, and all of that was considered agriculture. And there was testimony by the owner that they spent far more time engaged in keeping the farm up than they did with the rental activity that supplemented their income. Now, there was also, to more of your question, there was also proof in the Wilmuth case, in that opinion, that they were able to generate between $6,000 and $7,000 with the production of farm products and nursery stock, the cattle, the hay, and the fish. And there were some eggs being produced there too. They were able to produce between $60,000 and $70,000 of income with the rental activity. And so the court really looked at how much time the farmer, in this case Mr. Reynolds and Ms. Hunt, spend tending to the farm products and nursery stock versus how much time they spend with the rental activity. But the rental activity, because it's it's going to be recreational, educational, or entertainment, it's within the definition of agriculture. So these buildings are being used exclusively for agricultural purposes, whether they're for tree picking events or weddings or whatever you want to do, because it's on the property that's producing the trees, and it's secondary to on that sweat equity approach to the agricultural production.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Garrett.
First off, Ms. Hunt, you testified earlier that you had renovated those barns. One of them was primarily for storage, but the other one was primarily for the events.
So we've not had no events. So it would be used for our harvest festival. We want to grow our own pumpkins, have fall festival, spring festival, putting flowers down on other parts of the property. So it's to use it for all events. We wanted to be clear that we could use it for all events. It does take a long time. Trees you just don't plant them in the ground and they grow. We had to cultivate that farm. We would have used the existing barn that was there, but it was not safe. It was rodent infested. We felt it was unsafe for the public to even be on those grounds down there until we maintained it and bring it back up to standards. There is a little barn there that we're not using, was original 120-year-old barn. All we did was shore it up and restored it. It's nothing, it's just to look at. The outdoor pavilion, we wanted to bring stuff in where we could have events outside if the weather permitted, or use the inside of the new barn.
But the primary use for that particular barn is for those events that you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, and I can show you on this what we marked as exhibit.
Yeah, I've seen it.
She can.
So that we've provided you with pictures, and as I mentioned a minute ago, this metal barn that's enclosed, we've got the door shut. It's red with a black top and a black door. That's for the equipment storage. The barn in the middle will be rented for the events, and then also the open, what I would call a pole barn, is going to be rented for the events.
I think Mr. Elliott had a question.
Yeah, kind of a question or a comment with a question is, obviously codes are in place to keep people safe. Electricity needs to be done a certain way, gas needs to be done a certain way, fire suppression, egress, this is all to keep people safe, your customers, your occupants. So just because we move it to an ag setting, do we no longer need to keep people safe? Is that how we feel? I mean, egress, fire suppression, electric being done correctly, gas being done correctly, for your occupants, your neighbors, the people in your community, for their safety, I mean, don't we still need to keep it safe? And I guess my question would be, why not just make sure that it meets code? Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does currently. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful business. It's a great business concept. Why not just take the step to make sure the building meets codes? That would be my question.
So again, I would say that the real question is not whether, people want to be unsafe or a question about whether it should be safe or not. It's a matter of whether this county has the authority to enforce its building codes against Enchanted Farms. And because the county has adopted a standardized building code under the statute that I read to you earlier, and because a separate part of the same set of statutes says that once you do that, you can't use that authority to regulate buildings that are used primarily for agricultural purposes. You look to the definition of agriculture, it's clearly production of trees and entertainment events such as weddings. We don't want anybody to be unsafe, but by the same token, we don't believe the county has authority to enforce its building codes against the farm. And, for whatever reason, the legislature has provided for that, so that farmers don't have to jump through the same hoops as any other commercial business.
Doug?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Looking at the photograph in the pack, photograph E, Enchanted Farms 8 months ago. It looks like a polished concrete floor with a stick-built structure, metal walls.
I'm sorry, I don't have a, is that part of the?
It was in the information that I received from the board today.
Okay.
It's not polished.
It shows the 3 chandeliers in the middle of the building. Is that your wedding area?
That would have been my entertainment area, yes. For Christmas events, I wanted it to look nice. The floors are not polished, they're rough, as you can see, and everything was built with licensed contractors.
Is that area heated and cooled?
No, that part is not heated and cooled.
Is it going to be?
If we get to use it, we were going to add the heating and air to it, but that part is not.
Is it insulated?
No, sir.
A question for codes. Steve, if this goes through codes enforcement, would it have to be insulated?
Yes, it would have to meet all aspects of the building code, including energy, plumbing, framing. But what am I missing?
Yeah, plumbing, mechanical, electric, insulation, structural.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other comments? I think we'll hear from the opposition now.
You got something, Steve?
I want to make a statement before the opposition.
Go ahead.
While I respect respect Daniel's opinion and agree with him, 90% of the time we can't regulate this structure, but the 10% of the time we feel as though we can. You're interjecting a commercial business into an agricultural structure, and we feel as though at that point it has to meet building code. That there's a life safety aspect to it, and I'm tasked with protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And I think without meeting building code, I'm not doing my job.
Thank you. The opposition now? If you could come state your name and address, and remember, if you've got more than one speaker, you need to divide your 15 minutes accordingly.
Okay. My name is Daniel Long. I live at 816 East Copeland Drive. My biggest problem with this is the weddings and the road. If somebody over there can pull up the road that road is only 14 foot wide, period. I've changed my mirrors on my truck 4 to 5 times, and I'm sure my neighbors have too. The biggest problem is traffic down that road is really, really narrow, and you will hit your truck mirrors. The other issue is ambulances, anything that might happen, and there's a wedding going on that's backed up that road, there's no other way to get around it unless you go through someone's yard. That's all I have to say about it, and then I'll leave it to the next neighbor.
Okay, thank you. State your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Rick Sluss. That's S as in Sam, Luss. I live at 812 East Copeland Road. I actually own 8 acres just across the road from the venue spot. My main concern, I have no problem with agriculture, no problem with the Christmas tree farm. But the whole activity that's going to be taking place there is a commercial wedding venue. They have 9.45 acres. That doesn't even meet the minimum requirements for Greenbelt, Knox County. Knox County is 15 acres. It is basically a house with about 3 or 4 acres of Christmas trees. And clearly, this is a wedding venue, and I don't want the commercial activity on the narrow road. And just like my neighbor mentioned, I have lost 2 mirrors on that road. It's barely 12 to 14 foot wide. The road is not flat. You cannot see it from the image that we have in front of you, but the road is undulating. So as you go down the road, it's very dangerous. You'll pop up over a hill, and that's generally when you'll meet somebody, and they don't see you quick enough, and you'll knock the mirror off your vehicle. I can testify honestly that I've lost 2 mirrors on that road. But clearly, we have a commercial activity going into a residential, somewhat agricultural area. It's a very small property. It's 9.45 acres. I own 8 acres myself. If I want to go out there and plant an acre of trees and then turn my property into a wedding venue, I guess that's what I'll do. But to me, this is clearly an abuse of the agricultural rules in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Tony Lewis. I live at 840 East Copeland. If you'll look at that photograph up there, where the Christmas tree driveway comes in, that's our driveway, all of our driveway. That's a lane. It's a gravel lane, and we all live on properties off that. So the driveways come directly together. I did measure this morning before I left home. The road is 14 foot wide in front of that piece of property. I took the liberty to do Google searches on agriculture event centers. I've got one here, a lawsuit in Blount County. They go horribly wrong because of music, noise, intoxicated people leaving them, trash. We moved out there to have these mini farms or whatever years ago, and they've built large subdivisions on both sides of us down on Pettigo. I don't know if anybody's driven on East Copeland Road, but when you do, you spend half your time in somebody's yard because you can't pass 2 vehicles, especially trucks, dump trucks, construction trucks. So we've had a lot of traffic added because, the subdivisions down on Pettigo, there's probably 400, 500, 600 houses there now. So people that work in Oak Ridge and Clinton, use Copeland Road every morning and every afternoon to avoid the traffic jams that we have at Emory and I-75. This is clearly a commercial operation in a residential area. So, we were aware of a Christmas tree farm, but we were not aware of an event center. And an event center can be a bachelor party, a square dance, birthday parties, graduation parties. It can be things that get totally out of control. And I don't see where they're going to park vehicles. I mean, if they want 40 or 50, there's absolutely no way to park a vehicle on Copeland Road, okay? There's no shoulders on Copeland Road, none. We've had our mailboxes knocked down several times. There was, in the last 6 weeks, when I go to work, there have been 3 accidents between our driveway and the next driveway going up the page. People get run off. They run off they hit the culvert in the house next door to theirs and flattened both of their tires. That one vehicle was abandoned. I didn't know whose it was. They came back later and got it. And the other one was stuck in the ditch, and he finally backed out of the ditch. And that's in the last month, 3 vehicles in the last month in that 100 or 150 yards of road right there. So a lot of safety concerns, and quite frankly, I just don't think it's fair, that we moved out to be, somewhat secluded, and now we're going to be exposed to all the activity that's going to go on with a commercial operation with event centers. So I guess that's all I have.
Any questions?
I've got one.
Go ahead.
I do. For codes, is there a minimum acreage for wedding venues in Knox County?
I believe if they were to try to do a rural retreat, they would have to have 10 acres.
Okay.
I don't believe, though, the question today is here, can they hold weddings or not?
I was just curious.
Okay,
Just
okay,
curious.
yeah.
I mean, my thought on this, and I could be, well, this is how I see it, is a business inviting people or people paying to go into a structure should be able to expect a level of build quality or know that things are up to codes. You mentioned that there are bathrooms in there. Are those up to code?
Don't know.
We don't have any reason to know that they're not, but no, they have not applied for a building permit. So that is the real crux of the issue here, is whether we have to apply for a building permit and do all the things that are attendant to that, including get an engineer to basically design the building from reverse, and then go to codes and apply for the permit, and then do any sort of remedial work that might need to be done, but we don't know that needs to be done. But I don't think you get there because, like I said, there's no question that this is an agricultural business, right? And there's no question that it's a commercial business. And to be quite honest, we don't think that it would be, it would fall within the exemptions if it were not a commercial business. The definition of agriculture requires it to be a commercial production of farm products and nursery stock. And that's what we're doing here. We've got 2,300 Christmas trees. They're going to sell about 500 a year for the foreseeable future and replant those. I understand the policy concerns. I understand the safety concerns. But ultimately, the county only has the authority that it is granted by state law. And where the state law allows you to do certain things like adopt a building code, a safety code, fire code, you can do that. But you have to do it according to the state law. And the state law in this case says you cannot use the authority to adopt those standardized codes to regulate buildings that are used primarily for agricultural purposes. And I've heard nothing today here to suggest that what we intend to do on the farm is not exclusively agricultural within the definition of agriculture in Tennessee, which includes recreational, educational, and entertainment activities. Do I have rebuttal time, or are we going to go back and forth?
I think you're out of time.
I have another question.
Ms. Garrett?
I have a question for the owner. Said you're planning on holding, if she can come back to the microphone. You said you were planning on having weddings, corporate events and things like that. Are you going to have weddings only, or are you going to have weddings with receptions?
Well, we don't know what we're allowed to have yet.
If you are holding receptions or, for example, corporate events, and you stated you don't have a kitchen and don't
No.
plan on having a kitchen.
It would have to be catered. We do not have no kitchen.
That was my question. So how would, and if it would have to be catered, would there be, and this might be a question for codes, I'm not sure, would they have the ability to have alcohol on this premises?
So we've already looked into that. You'd have to have signed contracts with the person that's booking the event, with a licensed, insured bartender. We already looked into all that stuff. They would have to have insurance to back them up. on anything, whether it be somebody bringing photographers on, they have to have their own insurance. Plus, we also have $1 million umbrella policy added to the farm now to protect anybody that's on it now. But any event would have to have all the paperwork signed, and they all have to be licensed.
I would like to clarify on that point. Enchanted Farms is not an event producing, they don't produce these events. Their intent here is because she testified earlier that they spend a lot more time tending the trees than they do renting the place. It's their intent to offer the property to private individuals on essentially a ground lease basis. And they would come there, they would rent the property, they would set up, they would strike everything and move away when the rental agreement's over with. So they're just renting the property to people to come and have the event, which would be entertainment.
Right.
Ms. Garrett, to answer your question too, anyone that sold alcohol there would have to have a beer permit. So there are catering businesses that do have beer permits. So if food were catered in, they could sell beer as part of their catering license.
Just one follow-up question I have. I think you said that you plan to sell 400 to 600 trees annually.
Yes.
What do you expect the sales price per tree to be? I mean, how much does a Christmas tree sell for?
Oh, we're starting out at $75.
Okay, so 400 to 600 sold at 75 each. Okay.
We have a new shipment of trees coming in April to replace those, and this will be the first year we've opened it. It takes 4 years. We have staggered each year different types of trees and produce those. We're looking, then we've got 2 more coming in April, and in the fall, we'll see how these produce. If we have a lot of disease and stuff, we've had to fight this year. We'll see how they do. If they do good, then we'll order more of those in the fall. But we'll always have anywhere from 23 to 3,000 trees on the lot on our farm.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to address the neighbors. What they didn't know, that Copeland Road there, we gave the county so many feet to widen the road already. We didn't have no payment to it. So from our lot all the way down to Reed Road was offered to the county, and they accepted it to widen the road. But we haven't seen anything done yet. And we also have we would only rent to the renters only up to 50 to 60 cars. In that area there's no parking going up the driveway to the home or either driveway. There is absolutely no parking on Copeland Drive.
Any other questions?
Earlier, if I remember, there's a lot of information here, but earlier, if I remember right, you said when you filed your taxes, you filed it as an agricultural establishment, is that correct?
It's a F. It's filed F on the farm federal income tax, yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Any other questions? I just have one comment. I'm all for agribusiness. I just not too long ago went to an agribusiness farm in Blount County with some kids from our church. They had hay rides, did all sorts of outdoor activities, had lots of fun, paid money to do that. But when you start bringing the public into a building, the public expects and deserves that that building be built to safe standards. And without building codes, there is no way you can attest to the safety of that structure. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to uphold said ruling by Knox County Administrative decision to apply the building codes to the structure on the property due to the safety and welfare of the community and the people thereof.
I'm going to second that, but I wanted to also make a statement. I think the site is beautiful. I think what you're doing is absolutely admirable in providing this service, and it is a service to the community. And what the gentleman said earlier too is absolutely right. Copeland Road is a very narrow road, and I appreciate that you've given them, the county, the ability to widen that road in that area. But that is also a road that is there's a lot of speeders on that road. I've traveled that road quite frequently myself. But there is, and I wholeheartedly agree that this is a primarily agricultural business. Your primary use for this farm is growing and selling those trees. However, there is the issue of public safety, and I think the public does have an expectation that if they hold their events at your farm, that they deserve to know that all the building codes have been met, all the fire codes have been met, and there's an occupancy level that should be met. So I'm going to second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any additional discussion? All those in favor of upholding the decision by the Codes Administration, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion carries. The decision by the Codes Administrator is upheld. We'll see you in court. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Any opposition? We're